Empezamos. Good morning, everybody. Today we have the talk by Dr. Capitalina Diaz-Martinez, and she will talk about sex and gender analysis in research and innovation. Dr. Capitalina Diaz will be properly introduced by Isabel. Please here.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here again. I always say good morning, even if it is not morning, unless in Spain. Nothing happens. That's good. So it's a pleasure to have today with us Capitalina Diaz-Martinez. Thank you very much, Capitalina, for being here. She's full professor of sociology at the Universidad de Valencia, where she set up the still unofficial Gender and Science group, which has a dual research and teaching character. She was the first director of the Women and Science unit of the Ministry of Education and Science in 2006. Then she was science advisor in the Spanish representation in Europe, REPER, in 2008. Then she was Director General for Equality in Employment in the Spanish Ministry of Equality in 2008 as well. And she chaired the Spanish Association of Women Scientists and Technologists. That's the first time I say that in English. It's AMIT, from 2013 to 2016. She has carried out teaching and research stays at the United States, in the universities of Stanford and Harvard, in Mexico, in the UNAM, in Argentina, in the Universidad de Comahue, in the Universidad de Buenos Aires, and in Cuba, in the Universidad de Moa. She has also been lecturer in gender master's degrees at the Spanish University of Vigo, Salamanca, Castellón, Oviedo, and Valencia, her home university today. Her main fields of research are sociology of gender, gender and science, methodology of gender-sex analysis, sociology of education, public policies with a gender-sex perspective, and equality and power relations in the family. In this field, she has authored or co-authored more than 100 articles, books, and book chapters. Among the most recent, I'd like to pay attention to two of them that are of the ones I've read, especially, and I have loved a lot. I do tell you, invite you to have a read on that. They're really interesting. The first one is Hidden Gender Biases in Big Data. Is man to women as work is to mother? It's really very interesting paper, really. And then the second one is that I like to highlight here is Women of Science, Women in Science, Science with Women in 2018. I've loved many of them, and these two especially. Her recent research projects include parental authority, custody and visitation, gender pay gap in universities, gender pay gap and gender care gap, and gender bias in big data. At this respect, she's the driving force behind the creation of a software called CADI, which is under test, to correct gender bias in language, which is being developed by the computer engineering department of the Universidad Iberoamericana de Mexico. Her talk today is based on her own online course on the inclusion of gender and sex perspective in research and innovation, which she teaches in more than a dozen universities and research centers in Spain, in Latin America, and also for the H2020 at the Horizon Europe projects. Thank you again, Capitalina. It's really, it's beyond a pleasure for us to have you here. And the floor is yours.
Good morning. It's me who says thank you, because it's really an honor to be here and be presented by someone like Isabel, because it's so thank you very much, Isabel, for these kind words. And thank you to Pepa Masegosa, that unfortunately is unwell today and cannot be with us. And also to René Dufart, that helped a lot with some technical problems that we have early in this morning. So I will proceed to try to introduce you to the main ideas about the importance of including sex and gender analysis in the research, and to give you some hints about how to do it. This is to pass, or I'll use that. Okay. The topics that I will try to cover today is sex and gender analysis in research and innovation, is this strange word, yeah? Considered as a political issue. After that, we will see a few clarifications of a few concepts about gender equality, gender dimension, gender discrimination, etc. And the center of our lecture will be the inclusion of gender dimensions in each of the phases of the research process. That means the inclusion of gender dimension in the content of the research. Probably, although this usually is the focus of my work and my lectures and my course, probably in astrophysics is not so common to do that, and not so easy, as we will see. But we will work in another line, and how to take care about the gender equality in the people, not in the content, but in the people. I will talk about the two things, but I know that for you will be more common to the last point, gender relations in research, referring to the team. So there we go, because there is not a lot of time for so many things. The realization that gender equality and research quality, the two things together, that they are combined, and both of them are interconnected, and together influence results and outcomes, this realization has mobilized new interest in gender issues among policymakers in science and among science leaders, especially in Europe, the USA, and Spain, among many others. Canada is another of the ones that have a lot to say about that. We will see a few legal dispositions, mainly of the European Union, and a few ones about in Spain, that are many others that are similar in both. I start from the legal dispositions just to convey the idea that what we are talking here is not a result of an ideology or a feminist ideology or something like that, that is embedded, of course, but they are legal dispositions. The EU has in its norms to practice gender equality, and Spain the same. So we will see the spirit, in their own words, of the European Commission and Spain, that are I imagine, the main founders of our research. So it is important for us to comply with the norms of our research founders. She is Maria Gabriel, that is the commissioner, the European commissioner responsible for research. So she is the one who decides about the call, but she is the last one, is the one who signs the calls, but is the one that is behind, is the top person behind the research in Europe. And when Horizon Europe started in 2002, she said, I am determined to step up our efforts on gender equality and support more talented women in research and innovation. Also, I am committed to ensure that the gender dimension is fully integrated in research and innovation, supported by Horizon Europe, and that is fully acknowledged in the European research area. So these are the words of the main person in Europe in relation to research, with a lot of millions to be spent in research if we follow the lines. How Horizon Europe understand sex and gender analysis. Horizon Europe is the most advanced framework program. In fact, it's the 9th framework program, but the last one with being numbered was the 7th. The 8th was called Europe 2020, and this one is Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe is the most advanced framework program until now for the inclusion of sex and gender analysis in research. I said until now, but because I hope that after 2027 that we'll start a new framework program will be even more advanced. It addresses sex and gender perspective in, the content of the research, the composition of research teams, the composition of evaluators, advisors, managers, etc. Here I make a stop. The European Commission has also opened the pool of researchers to become evaluators. I really tell you that will be very good to go to the appropriate page and include yourself as evaluators. Spain has less evaluators than other countries and less women for scientific areas like yours, so it will be good to have some of you as evaluators. Also, includes or addresses the culture of research institutions, and we will have a few words later on about that. The activity of female researchers in business is very interested, the Commission also, and how to, when we have startups or we have a business with a scientific basis, to include gender dimensions too in that, and the role of equality in excellence, because there has been demonstrated the relation between research quality and equality. So gender equality is considered in the European Union as a political principle, as a cross-cutting principle that aspires to eliminate gender inequality and this is new, its intersection with other socioeconomic inequalities through research and innovation systems, including and addressing unconscious biases and systemic structural barriers. It's the first time that one of the framework programs considers gender inequality in interaction with other sociodemographic variables like age, ethnicity, race, gender identity, etc. So it's enlarging the scope of the equality. And also is the first time that addresses unconscious biases that we will talk later on, and systemic structural barriers of the institutions in which we work. And we will address that in a few minutes when we talk about the gender equality plans. For framework program, this framework program, the Horizon Europe, is the first time that gender equality is considered compulsory by default. So in principle, every call, all the projects presented to any call should include gender equality in the content and in the research team, except that the call has a particular flag that says this project doesn't mean that it's forbidden, but does not need to include the gender perspective. Probably many of the astrophysics projects will have this flag, probably most of them, because you don't work mostly for the objects of your research are not people, are not plants or animals, sexed plants or animals, and do not have direct implication in any sexed live being. So for that reason, probably you don't have the flag. But you have the flag that allows you do not introduce gender, sex and gender analysis in the content, but you are obliged to consider sex and gender in the team, in the research team, and in the administrative people that work with you. But I insist, it's the first time that it's compulsory. Until now, in the previous program, in the Horizon 2020, there was not any information about to be compulsory, and only the ones with the flag were compulsory, the introduction of sex and gender analysis. Now is the opposite. By default, it's compulsory. Addressing the gender dimension in research and innovation implies taking sex and gender into account throughout the research and innovation process, throughout the whole process, and we will go slowly about that. Gender dimension in teams. Gender balance in the project research teams will be strongly encouraged and will be taken into account in the gender prioritization of proposals. These are the Commission words, and we will talk about the prioritization in minutes. Research have the possibility of self-identifying according to 3 gender categories: women, men, and non-binary. This is, again, new. Never before were considered that besides men and women researchers, we can have non-binary researchers. So the non-binary counts in the 40-60. That is the minimum that is accepted by the Commission to understand that you have a parity in your research team is to have at least a minimum of 40% of the less represented sex. So to have 40% between women and non-binary or men and non-binary counts the same. Gender dimension, I prepared some hints. Until now, I was copying or making a copy of the Commission words, and this is why I usually put the label of the Commission on the bottom. But now this is my own ideas. So some hints. Besides the parity in the numbers 40-60, it's important to take in account for any foundation agents. It's important that you take in account when you write your proposal the compatibility of timetable and calendar with family and personal responsibilities. So you can write that in your proposal, that you will have not meetings before such and such time of the day or after such time of the day, because people can have responsibilities and cannot participate if the meeting is too early or too late. And this will be considered positively. You will have a point for that. The gender bias, you should consider the gender bias in professional interaction, and I will add some hints later on. The balanced distribution of tasks. If we don't think and we don't stop ourselves to think, mainly if we have a decision position in the teams, sometimes our sexism, because the sexism is embodied in our way of thinking, because we live in sexist societies. So nobody is free of sexism, either women, men, even feminist people. Sexism is there. So if we don't stop and don't pay attention, sometimes I will say something extreme, but the female researchers look for the coffee and the male researchers look into the computers. I know that is extreme, but if you think slow, you think every time that you distribute tasks, you should think what you are doing, or you are receiving tasks. And also the order in publications. This is something that is usually is not considered, but it's very important. Everybody knows the importance of the signature order. Yeah, so it would be good to have written down how you will implement the signature order in the several outputs that you get from your research, and taking gender into account, obviously. We will see how the situation is in physics nowadays. And also to take into account the risk of sexual harassment. That is one, probably you know the literature about that in astrophysics, but there are many publications that refers to the risk and the reality of sexual harassment that have cut off the careers of female researchers. And finally, the provisions of space and experts to attend to sex and gender-related complaints. You need to have it is necessary to have in the research centers, places and people to whom people who suffer for any sex complaint could go and be well received, accepted and treated in a proper manner. The European Commission also find that gender balance as a tiebreaker and excellence criteria, the two things. So when two proposals have the same number of points and the Commission only have money for one, the tiebreaker is if they have 5 elements to decide who will win. And one of the 5 is gender balance in the number of participants. So two proposals with the same number of points, and one has a male PI, and the other has a female, the female one will win. Or one that has two main persons, a male and a female, or a team balance. And the excellent criteria, that is really important if your project receives the label of excellence, they use the content in the research. If you include in the sex and gender analysis in the content of the research, you have more points to get. Well, in fact, it's a criteria. So you can only get excellence, the excellence label, if you include sex and gender analysis in your research. In your case, if you are doing a research in a call that do not force you to use sex and gender analysis, but you explain why you don't need to use that, and you explain why the provisions that you have taken for equality among the members of your team, you can also qualify you for excellence criteria. Here you have the ones of you who have filled forms for the Horizon Europe. You probably recognize this page in which they ask you, describe how the gender dimension is taken into account in the project's research and innovation content. If you do not consider such a gender dimension to be relevant in your project, please provide a justification. This section is mandatory except for the topics which have been identified in the work program as not requiring the integration of sex and gender in research and innovation content. Remember,
necesitas para que te pueda ayudar con eso.
Perdona. The smart telephones are not so smart. Remember that is the question relates to the content of the plain research and innovation activities, not to the gender balance in the teams. And they give a piece of information. Sex and gender analysis refer to biological characteristics and social cultural factors, respectively. For guidance for knowing how to do it, you can go here. If you if you press the previous link, you go to that publication, that is Gender Innovations 2, How Inclusive Analysis Contributes to Research and Innovation. This is, you can get it the book, or you can get it online. And this is a report prepared by a team led by Londa Schivinger, that is also the one who created this web page. And this is especially created for Horizon Europe and is full of samples about how to include sex and gender analysis in your research. So my advice is to go there and to look to see if you find any sample, any research sample close in any way to your research and your topic, and just follow what they did, because they are the positive samples. Also here in this web page, you have in environment, engineering, and science, health and medicine. So in these 4 topics, you can look and see if there is any sample about research close to yours and hints about how to do, how to include sex and gender analysis in your research. So they are really 2 good tools. As I said, one of the aims of the Commission is change the culture of our institutions, and for that is compulsory that each member of a research team proposal her or his institution has a gender equality plan. That is compulsory. So it's because the Commission, the European Commission, has learned that after many years pushing and putting money in improve the content of research, the content of the research with inclusion of gender and sex analysis, we haven't gone too far. So now are insisting that it's important to change the culture of our institutions. So for that, they demand that the institution should come to be more than neutral, gender friendly. And for that, we'll need to have a gender equality plan with these 4 mandatory aspects. So probably probably no, I'm sure the CSIC has a gender equality plan, but I don't know if this center has it or not. But if it has it, probably doesn't follow these 4 demands that the EU has. So it will be necessary to revise our gender equality plan in order to comply with what the Horizon Europe is demanding us. So the 4 things are publication. That one is, I'm sure that you already have it. Publication, a formal document posted on the institution's website and signed by the senior manager. Esto probably you have that, but probably it's not so easy that you have that. Dedicated resources, a commitment of resources and expertise in gender equality to implement the plan. So must be someone with knowledge in gender equality that follow up the plan, that see that the plan is not only something written and published in the website, but is being implemented. And it cannot be anyone, need to be someone with a minimum of gender knowledge. Also, data collection and monitoring, data on staff and students disaggregated by sex, and annual reports based on indicators. So if we start this year, we need to know to have this disaggregated data. Probably the plan should have an aim to increment the number of women in such and such positions, etc. So next year, we will need to collect the data and see how far we have gone during a year. And the Commission, we need to know that. And finally, training. It will be necessary sessions of sensitization or training on gender equality and unconscious gender bias for staff and decision makers. So here, I assume that we are just working for the fourth square, at least for staff. I don't know if also for decision, yes, also for decision makers, but probably there are more decision makers that is much more difficult to reach them. Yeah. For instance, my own university, the University of Valencia, we have for many years, maybe 5 years or more. Each year I teach a course that I taught it here 3 years ago, a quite long course, 20 hours, 5 face-to-face and the other 15 on remote, and for researchers. But if along 2 years, the equality unit has tried that the rector and the vice rector had a meeting with one of us to discuss a few of these things. And they never have a gap in the agenda to put this meeting. It's impossible. Apparently, the diary of the rector and the vice rector are always occupied for more important things than gender equality. So they will not fill that square. So this is in relation to culture, and I think that we are finishing here. Spanish legislation, let me see the time for a minute, because we will finish up. Yeah, it's true, sorry. The limit of the talk is 12:30, 1:30, vale. Just, I will go fast. In Spain, from 2007, we have a normative to include the sex and gender dimension in research. Here, in March, in the quality, in the Ley de Igualdad, in the Equality Act, Article 20, we have these demands. It is necessary to optimize statistics and studies in such a way that they include the sex variable. They establish and include new statistical indicators that provide for a fuller understanding of the differences in gender. The statistics should design and introduce the indicators and mechanisms required to ascertain the effect of other variables, like I said, the other socio-demographic variables that combine with gender. We should take sufficiently large samples, revise the data available, taking gender into account. Most of them do not affect the type of research you do, but just for you to know that from 2007 in this country, we should have that in consideration. But is anyone, and this is an organic act, so is the higher level of laws in our country behind the law next to the Constitution? So, and we have that in that law. But is anyone checking if the research in Spain do that? No one, unfortunately. So our laws are not too bad, but if we implementing them, not so good. Review and, as necessary, revise existing statistical definitions. This is similar to what I showed before of the Horizon Europe. This is the Spanish call, the Plan Estatal de Investigación. We have the point G is the point about gender equality. G1, gender equality in content. G2, gender equality in research teams. And it specifies what we should consider. And in the annexes of each call, there are several pages indicating us how we should look in our proposal for sex and gender research. And we go on. Just the title. In the USA, in 2000, they create the National Research, National Science Foundation. Thanks. National Science Foundation created in 2000 this program, Science. It has been renewed in 2021, and it has been given millions of dollars to help many research programs all around the country that introduce gender equality. I should say that they are more focused on having more women in the research teams and in decision positions than to change the content of the research, but they try the two things. In Canada also have several programs, particularly in life sciences. I said that we will talk about some concepts. There we go. Just a little note about current sexism, because many people think that we today don't have sexism in the academia, because the sexism has become more subtle and less direct than used to be in the past. Modern sexism is characterized by denial of personal bias and prejudice toward women, a general conscious belief in the equality of the sexes, but unconscious attitudes that foster non-support for programs and legislation helpful to women. So it's very difficult to find today in the academia people that openly say that women are less valuable than men or things like that. But in the everyday practice, women and men make unconscious decisions that marginalize women. This is the results of research. I developed one concept trying to understand what happened, how this unconscious bias work. Let we see that we have this young man, could be also young woman, let we say that he's a scientist, and he comes to a lab and he sees that. This is what he sees. But what he interprets maybe he could interpret what we will say, what he is seeing, but also it is quite probable that he sees, inverted commas, that, or he sees that. It's exaggerating. But this is what happened with unconscious bias. We, women and men, look at a woman doing a hard, difficult scientific work, and what we are seeing, when we see a man doing this hard, male scientific work, we are seeing the proper thing. But when we are seeing a female, it's not so clear that we see the same. Maybe we see a combination of all of that. But when we see a man, we don't see a combination of the sexy man or the combination of the good father, etc., etc. So this is the basis of our unconscious bias. So everybody's biased, because bias and stereotyping is part of our way of thinking. We always think in a stereotyping way and a biased way, because the life is too fast and we need to take decisions continuously. We go walking for the street, we cross with people, and we take decisions about who are they and how safe is to be close to them, or how nice, or whatever. So life is really fast. We need to take decisions immediately. In many occasions, it's a survival condition. So we bias and we stereotypize. So the question here is that doing science, we need to be conscious about the kind of bias that we could put in our way of thinking, and how to correct this bias. So it's nothing to be ashamed for being biased, because it's the way of our cognition system works. But what is a shame is not realizing that these help some people, mostly men, and a particular type of men, and make disadvantages for other people, mostly women. I call that gender agnosis because there is a neuronal illness, a neuronal condition that is agnosis, that is visual agnosis, is something that happened to people who doesn't have any problem in their vision system. They see correctly, their eyes work properly, but the connection between vision and interpretation is broken, and they cannot interpret correctly what they are seeing. So this is why I call it agnosis. Gender, in this case, gender agnosis is a kind of metaphor. Yeah, it's a. I said that cuando talk about the signature order. In astronomy and astrophysics, women are only about 5–10% in editor-in-chief roles in major mainstream journals, keynote speakers, chairpersons of important conference sections, distinguished awards recipients in major conferences and meetings in astronomy and astrophysics. In the last 40 years of academic records, it is not difficult to find no woman in such roles at any given time. There is a permanent gross objectification and harassment in the form of micromachismos. No time to go deeper. Here you have two new books, or two quite recent books, about how sexism still pervades physics and astrophysics. So if you have interest, you can have a look at them. For me, it's not so easy as it will be for you, but could help you to realize in your everyday practice how sometimes you are sexist in your work, or you can recognize that some treatment that you receive is a sexist treatment, although you have been so accustomed that you have naturalized it. So it's just time to say, stop, don't follow that line. Let me see if I see this definition. Oh, sorry. I will jump this. I can pass this to you, to any of you, and you can distribute it for the people. And so I just, well, benefits for gender equality in research. Research has shown to be benefit or more equal participation, which improves collective intelligence, improves cognitive diversity in problem solving, gives a more realistic understanding of the contents. It helps make research and innovation both relevant and responsible to society. And here we go to the focus. And I decided to present the focus, not explaining the content, by just giving you a checklist about what you should look when you write your research proposal, or when you think about your research design, in order to include sex and gender analysis as far as you can. Let me see this checklist. Research focus. First question you should ask: are gender and or sex concepts used in the research? If yes, have those gender or sex concepts been explicitly defined? It is clear which aspects of gender and or sex are being looking in the study. It refers to the content, of course. If not, do you consider that this absence is a significant limiting factor? Given the existing knowledge in relevant references, are these concepts present? Should gender and or sex factor be considered? Probably most of your research, the answer will be no, and you will not have relevant literature that include that. So doesn't apply all the time to your research. I understand there are people from the Institute of Biology also probably following the lecture. For them, is much more relevant. So I addressing mainly to the people of this institute. But since they are these other people, this is particularly relevant for them, and sometimes it's for you, because sometimes your research has a relation, we will see in minutes, with human beings or other living beings. If you I will jump. When you formulate your question and hypothesis, do research questions and hypotheses refer to gender or sex in relevant groups of phenomena? Literature review. Does literature review cite previous work which support the existence of lack thereof of significant differences between women and men, girls and boys, plants, animals, or tissues? Does it point to which extent have its past works taken into account gender and sex? Also, probably it's not so obvious in your field. Methodology. Is the sample population balanced enough to catch sex or gender factors? It is possible to gather data disaggregated by sex or gender. Are inclusion and exclusion criteria well justified regarding gender and or sex? Is the proposed data collecting method appropriate for gender and sex research? Is the analytical focus appropriate and rigorous enough to catch gender and sex-based factors? So with this checklist, even if your research has this flag that say that you are not obliged to use gender and sex analysis in the content, you could have a look at these questions of the checklist, because it could help you maybe in some ways. Here you have the Pasteur quadrant. I suppose that you are familiar with that, the Pasteur quadrant. For specifically, I adapted it from a German foundation to gender analysis. Pure basic, when you do pure basic research that is not directly or indirectly linked to people or animals or plants in the object or methodology or the research. If you do that, that probably is your case. No, you don't need to look for gender analysis in the content. If you are doing pure applied research, that is a potential application to people or living environment, is foreseen but is not directly addressed in the appropriate methodology. Could be yes or not. Used inspired research, a direct investigation of the interactions between technical solutions and people. This will happen to you. Sometimes because things that you have discovered to be used for searching things not related to living beings could be applied to analysis or studies to living beings. So in that case, yes, partially no. And finally, when you always need to do it, yes, when you do research responsible and innovation applied to society, assessment of public and environmental exposure to new technologies and manufactured products. Yeah, probably to research about the garbage that there are all around the earth could be in that line, but I don't know. You could look for examples of your own field in this quadrant. And it will be interesting to see, doing any type of this research, how many women and men you have. In any quadrant in which you are, you can count the number of women and men that are there. I will give you some samples of positive actions. Just to give you an idea about how to include something towards gender equality in your research. For instance, naming of new stellar objects with female names, or female scientists better. This is something that can be done. And although your field is strange to me, I understand that recently you are discovering technologies that allows you to discover new stellar objects. I don't know if you call stellar objects. Yeah. But so there will be so many that probably there is just the moment to compensate for all male name objects of the past. So we can start to call the objects with feminine names. Nomination of women researchers for high status positions is usually, you know, that is what is called the all boys network. The all boys network makes that men select men, digitalize men, and forget about women, about nominating women for good positions. The last point is belongs to a new. I starting now a activity about a project about demanding address to women and men, but more to men than women, that do not participate in any panel that does not have at least 40% scientists, female scientists. I think that nowadays it's not good enough that someone sends you an email saying, would you like to be part of the scientific committee of such and such? And you say, oh yes, thank you very much. I am very grateful. I said that today we need to say who else is in the committee or in the panel. Yeah, and you see, and there is not, if it's not 40, at least 40% of women to say formally, I'm sorry, I will be delighted to belong to that committee, but as far as it has at least 40% female components. I think that we should start to do that, male and female, because I think that is a practice that usually we don't have. And it's the same if that someone invited you to be the main speaker of a conference. Okay, I am a male and I am the speakers of the first speaker. And who is the last speaker? Is a male or is a female? So if I am a male, I would like to that the last one will be a female. So is this composition. So I think that these are positive actions that we can take on account in our activity for now on. And it's the association I just proposed to the AMIT, that is the association that Isabel, Pepa, and I don't know if someone else here belongs to, Asociación de Mujeres Investigadoras y Tecnólogas de España. I just proposed this activity to start with this campaign about that no less than 40% scientists. So in English, they have a name for that. They say, in a state of say panel, they say manel. When the panel is full of man, so it's a manel. So in Spanish, I think that we, at least my creativity is not enough to produce a name like that, but we don't want to have more manels. Yeah. And I must confess that I am the reason that moved me to organize this campaign, that was just last week ago, 1 week ago, was because in the last years we have been complaining for many of these manners. But just last week I learned, as Isabel said, I am a sociologist. In Spain, we have the Spanish Federation of Sociology, and it has entities in each autonomous community. So la Asociación Andaluza de Sociología will have a conference next month in Córdoba, and they have nominating a scientific committee with 15 people, 14 male and 1 female. In sociology, that there are as many women as men, this is not acceptable. So this, I said, enough is enough. we should start a campaign and insist on that. So this is the first occasion that I have the possibility to say it openly, but so the campaign is on, it started today. And how to mitigate microaggressions and the differential treatment of women by both men and women? Because women, we do the same. We don't ask who is in the panel, and we sit in the panel and see 14 men and said, well, it's too many, but this is all, no complaint. So how to mitigate it? Through awareness and education. How to raise awareness and educate people? Training faculty to be aware of how they might inadvertently treat women differently and be advised to ensure equal treatment, making sure that, and this is our daily diario, como decimos, each day activity. We look at the tasks in the lab are assigned fairly. Every participant has equal access to equipment. Every participant can share their ideas at in-group meetings and during experiments. We must take care of that. They are people very outspoken. So they are always occupying the verbal space. So we need to take that on account and say and facilitate that everybody has their say in the debate, in the working meetings. Faculty are equally available to all students and participants. Departments need to have a tough and vocal stance regarding their refusal to tolerate a work environment hostile to women. It's not very easy that we see that. And accountability for maintaining a bias-free environment. How to create a women's friendly climate. In the research team, pay attention to fair, similar to the one that I said previously, fair assignment tasks, authorship order in publications, participation in conferences, timetable and calendar compatible with personal life, clear criteria and order for promotion, and this is all. Two examples, I go fast. This is a toilet for spacecrafts that took then many years to develop after women in their, how do you say, simulacros? When training to fly in the spaceships, and they didn't have a toilet in which they could, without gravitation, to go to the loo is not easy. And if the loo is prepared only for male, and we are anatomically are not the same, as you know. So it happened the same with the suits. So suits for women, suit for men, toilet for both sexes. Two examples that shows us the effects of the absence of sex and gender analysis. One in the life sciences. This is what a heart attack feels like to a man. Is some kind of pressure in the chest, left side, and like a burning, and the same through the left arm. This is how the 80% of women feel like a heart attack. Deep chest pain, discomfort, pressure, or squeezing, like there is a ton of weight on you, unusual upper body pain, etc. Breaking out in a cold sweat, like dizziness, nausea, unusual fatigue, shortness of breath. So if you suffer something similar to the first picture, you immediately recognize that you are suffering a heart attack. But only 20% approximately of women have those symptoms. The other 80% have these symptoms. But the men, please pay attention, approximately 20% of men have the same symptoms that women. So pay attention if you suffer some of them, just one, etc. You could be suffering also a heart attack. And what happened in the Faculty of Medicine today in Spain, and in the MIR exam papers, the symptoms of heart attacks, even today, are just that. They don't consider that women have the other symptoms. What are the consequences? That there are women dying unnecessarily for heart attacks. They don't recognize them, and when finally they go to the hospital, in the hospital, they don't recognize that. So when they finally understand that this woman or this member that belongs to the 20% of these symptoms are suffering a heart attack, either is dead or her or his heart has suffered a important necrosis. And what happened? I thought that I have an example. Oh, sorry. It's the only one that I have. I thought that I have other example in physics, but doesn't matter. In the same line that the European Commission, in 2016, all publishing houses, all European publishing houses of scientific work have a meeting, and they said that they have social responsibilities because they are ones that publish our research. So they should do something for stopping research that doesn't include sex and gender analysis. So they took a decision, that is, they call it SAGR, Sex and Gender Research Guidelines, and they said that each researcher, they give guidelines about how the research, the original should be sent to the publishing house. I will only say the titles because I don't have enough time, and you will have that. But they ask you to reconsider the title, the introduction, the methods, and the results. And you know that at the final we said the discussion, also the discussion. They produced this chart in which they said, topic of the study, are sex and gender relevant to the topic of study? And you will say yes or no. If it's yes, you continue. If you say no, you should justify. And this all along your original work. The agreement that the publishing houses have get is that before to send to the double blind, to the two researchers to evaluate your research, before that the publishing house should look for that. And if your research doesn't follow all these paths, they send it to you and you will revise it, or it will not be accepted. They don't spend the time of evaluators evaluating your research. So it's also important not only to be financed, but also to be published, to follow the sex and gender analysis. Probably you know the Waterloo, I don't know, Charter for Gender Inclusion and Diversity in Physics, but they also make extraordinary declaration that they are really like it. People of all genders are equally good in doing excellent science and deserve equal opportunity. Diversity contributes to excellence in science so that the full participation of people of all genders will enhance excellence in the field of physics. Both thought and action are necessary to ensure equal participation for all. The attainment of equal opportunity should be measured by outcomes. Thus, as long as the percentage of women in the next level of advancement does not equal the percentage in the pool, equal opportunity cannot be considered to exist. Long-term change requires periodic evaluation of the progress and consequently to make the change if it's necessary. This is important, not only make the things work, but revise if they are doing properly. And with that, I finish with 10 minutes extra. So thank you very much. Muchas gracias. if sí, sí.
So that's time for questions. Thank you very much, Carolina.
Just one point is to person to want to make a question, please approach to the microphone. So everybody can hear, because we are 12 here, but we are 40 all over.
I see. Okay. So go ahead. This is here.
Thank you very much for the interesting talk.
But you should talk at the same time to the audience here.
Okay. Well, these people know I have been director of one agricultural science institute in the last 8 years. That means I had read all evaluation for project from the Plan Estatal de Investigación, all evaluation during 8 years. As far as I can remember, there were no mention to sex or the gender aspect in this positive or negative evaluation. And then I think it's very difficult to encourage people to make all these things. I completely agree when nothing happened at this level.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
And also probably some people from my institute are hearing or streaming your talk. And you mentioned plants. I am working with plant stress. And I would say it's quite difficult to include in the content of the project some sex or gender aspect.
Gender, no, but
No,
sex. Yeah.
sex.
Yeah, well, they are, you know more about plants than myself, obviously, but most plants have both sexes. Yeah, but in any case, the idea is that you should include as many the correct proportion of all the sexes present. So if there is a plant that has 5, because there are plants with 5 sexes. So if there are plants that have 5 sexes, you should include an appropriate proportion of each sex in your analysis. Your 5 sexes. If they are, at this most common, just 2 sexes, you should include both of the 2 sexes in the research. And whatever you do it with the 2 sexes in presence, is the idea. And about that, for years and years and years, we are not considering the content of gender in research, although the law says that in 2006, 2008, I think, during that period, I was working at the, Isabel said that before, I was working at the Ministry of Education, at that time was Education and Science, and we managed to include 5 extra points for research that include sex and gender in the analysis or equivalence or parity in the teams. It was controversial, but we did it. And it was on the Boletín Oficial del Estado, but was no one taking care that in each evaluation meeting, someone considered that. And was not possible. And it was not possible, that was what I advised, but my position in the ministry at that time was too low, was just the director of the gender equality unit. You can imagine that the gender equality unit in the whole Ministry of Education and Science was very little thing, but was myself and my secretary. So this gives you an idea. And we said we need to include a checklist for the evaluators to when they evaluate and read the proposal, just to have the checklist and see if they really consider sex and gender in the content. Yeah, in the case of plants, sex in the content. But we never managed that. Finally, in the maybe recent 2018, something like that, was during the Rajoy government. We managed to produce, and the Secretary of the State accept a checklist with 10 points to give to each evaluator to have this list to evaluate the content of the research, the research and the sex and gender content of the proposal. We produce the 10 points, we publish it, it's supposed that each evaluator should receive it, but nobody was there to be sure that each evaluator received it, and nobody was there in each panel to say, what about the gender dimension? Nothing. So we have been working with that nearly 20 years, nearly, not as much, but 16, 17 years, and we didn't manage to do that. We managed to do that in my community, in Valencia, la Comunidad Autónoma de Valencia, and for 4 years, it worked. So we have this 10 items checklist, and we have an expert in every field. So there was the ordinary evaluators. They evaluate the project, plus a gender expert of the field evaluating only the gender and sex and content. And if they with the checklist, they give positive, they could have 5 extra points over the points that received for the rest of the evaluators. We have that for I think that 4 years in Valencia, and now they stop it. There are 2 years now without that. Nobody knows why it disappears. Nobody has any idea. Or they even say that we didn't take out that. So there is no one responsible for the disappearance of the 5 points. And now we are again, this association, again working to try that at least in the calls of the Valencian community, we will have again the 5 points. So it's really, we are working on that. For the European Union, takes it on account. So if you send a proposal to Horizon Europe, you should consider that. In Spain, we don't manage. The Agencia, the Spanish Agencia of Investigación, has also a long declaration of that. In the Spanish proposal, you have the point G1 and G2. Nobody pays attention. So it's a problem that we have in this country. It's not only with gender, with many things. We have quite good ideas and we have quite good laws, but we never think that the laws should be implemented. We need to have a kind of, the French said, perras guardianas, of gender. So it's like we have a kind of gender commissar in each meeting saying gender is not gender equality is not considered here, is not considered there. I don't know, because something so important as 5 points in 100, 5 points is a lot. So, but if it's no one there to do that, I don't know what more to do.
It could be even better. It could be even better because we had a project with 4 notes in the research project from Ministry, and we were in total 30, considering the 4 notes, so the whole project. We were about 30-something% women, and in one of the notes we were mostly women. And the only comment we received about that was that we had gender imbalance in our note because we were.
Yeah.
Right.
This happened very often. Yeah, I know a group of women in physics, in my university. All of them are women, 5 of them. They sent the project to FECIT, and the FECIT didn't approve the project because the 5 researchers were women. So we never hear that a project was rejected because all the members were men. Never. But if there are 5 women, apparently this is so visible, it cannot be good science. Yeah. They are full professors, etc. And now, when they were writing the current, the last approved law, the Act of Science, la Ley de la Ciencia, that passed 2 weeks ago, appears 2 weeks ago in the Boletín Oficial del Estado. We send from AMIT, I request that, to send to the minister to change the idea of parity 40-60 as because it could happen things as yours of the physics in Valencia, and said minimum 40% females. So it's better to say minimum 40% because once you have 40%
in other fields, maybe.
So exactly. So we should change to say at least 40% women, and with that everything passes.
Okay, thank you for the overview. My comment goes in that direction that I think that those initiatives are very helpful, very good. I appreciate them. Sorry. However, they are not applicable to all the fields. I'm from planetary science. I have to see that I've seen, for example, in the authorship, I can see all my papers, most all my papers. I am the only woman, not because I didn't pay attention. I promise I pay attention. Say, oh my God, why am I there? And also to make the jury. For the thesis, I found very difficult to find women, and as a woman, as a scientist, I don't like to put women there just because they're women if they don't have the expertise. I think it's not correct. So this is my criticism. My worries is that regarding, for example, the mandatory aspect of including women in the project. My worry is that since in some field of science and physics, or my field in particular, I talk about myself, we are very few women. We will be over solicited because all the people writing projects will ask us to be in the team, and we could say yes, we can be in all the projects, but we don't have time, resources to work on all the projects. So we have to be very careful to see which field we are talking about. And not to put too much charge on the few women who are working in some fields. That's my worries and criticism at the same time.
Yeah, I think that you are right. And there are fields in which this is difficult. But first, you need to have to be aware of the importance of having women. And once you are aware of that, you go to a conference, you read things, and you find more women than you have expected. Maybe not in your center of research, but just in the next province or in the next country. So if you are aware of the importance of having women, you find more than you think. Second, very often we have men and women of the same level and the same quality, but the men manage to be more known. Yeah, and so the first names that come to your vision are men. So you need to think twice and look for women. Sometimes you look for young men for your research team, young men that are starting their research. Maybe they are even not postdoc, and you think it looks interesting. I should bring it to my team, my research team, because this will be the beginning. What? Okay, think, well, we have enough men. I will look for a good woman, clever woman that can do that. So if we are aware, you will have a percentage more, I don't say the equivalent number, but more women than you think. This is the first thing. And the second, I think that should be a note, an asterisk saying, in my research field, this is the number of women, and you even can give numbers. So it's only 15% of female full professor, 20% of professors, etc., etc. So you give the numbers and say, taking that into account, I only can make a team with that and that. Okay, and saying that, I think that people will understand that. Doesn't matter that the normative said 40, 60 or minimum 40. I think that I hope. Okay,
I'm afraid that it could be exactly a limitation for projects and
yes.
to go ahead, because if we don't have, so at this stage, I think in the next 20 years, the situation will improve. I hope so. But at this stage, that's not directly applied.
And at the same time, I should say that there are fields with too much females. So in those fields, probably if you have 100% females, in order to not be dismissed because these people that see too many women, you can say that. If you were in one of those fields, for instance, teaching, pedagogy, whatever, you can say, in this field, 95% of professors and full professors are women. This is why all my team is females. It would be good to have a better parity. This is all. So I think that we will work. I hope that the people is flexible enough to understand that. But this is a real problem. And also it's a problem that these women, these few in fields with few women, these women are too demanding and too busy in too many things. And they should also, the institutions provide to support these women for not being involved in some administrative tasks, etc. Because if not, they do not have time to attend to many demands for the research, from research areas.
Okay, thank you.
A question. So I'm a postdoc, I'm not part of the commission, so my day by day is reading paper and write paper. So I was thinking what to say, thanks for the talk, and would be, for example, worth, and I mean, when you write scientific paper, the only free text is there in the acknowledgement. So so I work with Galaxy with no gender, but perhaps it's worth to add a few lines in the acknowledgement saying this team is composed by 50-50 or not. So when you are actually writing the paper, you can have a sense that you are excluding or including women and men. So it would be worth to add these few lines in, so we can see it every day, not only in big projects that maybe that they are once a year or something like that.
Yes.
So this kind of thing can help.
Yes, I think that this is a very good idea. And it's also important that although most publishing houses ask for us to say just the surname, just to put the first name in order to visualize the few women that are in research. So I usually say that although you demand the initial, I prefer to use the full name in order to visualize women, and they should usually accept that. And with that, it's important. And in this in the same line, this campaign that I am starting around the 40%, I am thinking about to have a kind of logo that the people who works with parity, just put that logo in order to recognize that it's like when you put a logo saying this work and respect the environment or is recyclable or whatever. The same logo that recyclable, a logo to say that you have parity in your team, something like that.
If there is a code, for example, for financial project, for gender balance, we can also have a track easily to our papers if there are many women or not, because sometimes also names are not so easy to understand. We are international teams, so to have these and a code in the statistics. So.
Yes, in the just a field note saying this team is composed by 30% female or 80% or whatever.
Yes.
Or we support if it's a European thing, we support the gender equality program of the EU, and we have such percentages in our team. Yes, would be. I think that this is a really good idea. Thank you for it.
Any other question in the audience? I have one myself. I think that, it's more a comment than a question. I think that we doing basic research for all of us is difficult, as Sally was saying, to have an idea how to include that in the content, because the content does have nothing to do with whatever. But the whole process is important. So the team, of course, but also for us, and especially for astronomy, outreach is a great way to connect to people. And I think that we have a great work to do there in outreach, and we have a lot to do to show that we can reach, even if we don't have yet, equality, that we want to have equality, and we want to show that the role of women is important. And it goes to both women and men, and especially to men, because still their voices are heard stronger than us, I think.
Yes, it's in the line that I said, name the new things that you discovered with female names. Say how many women were in the research team, all these lines. So we need to visualize the women that are working in the field. Because first is real, is a truth, is a justice, because it's to recognize what is doing the job. Secondly, more girls, we see women doing this kind of jobs, and so we will have more women in these fields, and then people will evaluate us as good as all male astronomers. Yes, we should do that.
Okay. Is there any other question? So thank you very much again, Capitolina. It's been a pleasure for us to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Bueno, pues René, como ya no tienes, entonces